The July air was heavy and wet in Branson, Missouri, as a summer storm built across the Ozarks. Tourists crowded the strip, lights from theaters and arcades glowing through the haze. On the shores of Table Rock Lake, a group of families boarded a tourist attraction that had been operating in the town for decades. It was called Ride the Ducks, an amphibious vehicle that promised fun both on land and water. For some, it was a novelty, a strange-looking craft with a blunt nose and a canopy roof. For others, it was just a family outing, a chance to see Branson from a different angle. Nobody climbing aboard that evening imagined they were stepping into one of the deadliest tourist accidents in recent American history. The vessel that set out that night was Stretch Duck 7. Like the rest of the fleet, it was based on a World War II-era DUKW design, vehicles that had been built for carrying troops and supplies from ship to shore. The duck boats, as they came to be called, had long since outlived their military purpose. Instead, companies across the country bought and refitted them for tourism, taking passengers on hybrid tours that rolled through city streets before splashing into nearby rivers or lakes. They were quirky, popular, and marketed as safe family fun. Yet safety experts had been warning for years that the design was fundamentally flawed. Low freeboard meant the hull rode close to the waterline, and the heavy canopy roofs could trap passengers if the boats ever sank. On July 19, 2018, conditions on Table Rock Lake turned dangerous. Severe thunderstorms rolled across the region, carrying strong straight-line winds. Weather alerts were issued throughout the afternoon. By the time Stretch Duck 7 prepared to enter the water, wind gusts on the lake were approaching hurricane force. Still, the tour went ahead. Some accounts later suggested the order of the tour was reversed, placing the water portion first to try to beat the incoming storm. It was a gamble, and one that would end in tragedy. At around 6:30 p.m., the duck boat drove down the ramp and churned into Table Rock Lake. 31 passengers and 2 crew members were on board, including families with children. Within minutes, the storm hit. Gusts reached over 70 miles per hour, whipping the lake into waves. Whitecaps rolled across the surface, battering the boat. Water splashed over the bow. Inside, video captured passengers joking nervously at first, then falling silent as the waves grew. The captain told them not to worry about life jackets, insisting they wouldn't be needed. It was a decision that would prove fatal. The storm worsened. The duck boat struggled against the wind, spray drenching passengers. Then came a wave higher than the gunnels. Water surged aboard. The bilge pumps could not keep up. Within moments, the vessel was wallowing, bow dipping lower. Passengers clutched each other as the canopy roof boxed them in. And then, in a matter of seconds, Stretch Duck 7 rolled and went under, disappearing into the storm-churned lake. Survivors described chaos. Some managed to fight free of the canopy, clawing their way into the dark water. Others were trapped beneath the roof as the boat sank to the bottom, more than 80 feet down. Nearby vessels rushed to the scene, pulling people from the waves, but it was already too late for many. 17 people drowned, including 9 members of a single family visiting from Indiana. Children, parents, and grandparents, all lost in the space of minutes. It was the worst duck boat accident in U.S. history and one of the deadliest tourist tragedies the country had ever seen. Rescuers recovered bodies that night and into the next day. Images of the lake, normally a place of recreation, were suddenly associated with grief. At a Branson hotel, survivors and family members gathered in shock, waiting for word on loved ones. As the death toll rose, so did anger. How had a tour boat been allowed onto the lake with a severe thunderstorm warning in effect? Why had passengers not been told to put on life jackets? And why were duck boats, with their well-known safety flaws, still in operation decades after warnings had been issued? Investigators pointed to problems that went far beyond one unlucky storm. The National Transportation Safety Board had raised concerns about duck boat design after earlier accidents. In 1999, a similar vessel sank on Lake Hamilton in Arkansas, killing 13. The canopy roofs, they found, acted like a cage, preventing escape. They recommended changes, including removing or redesigning canopies, adding buoyancy, and improving weather monitoring. Many of those recommendations were ignored. Operators continued to run duck boats with minimal modifications, marketing them as safe while cutting corners on passenger protection. In Branson, the company that ran Ride the Ducks defended its record, but faced immediate lawsuits from grieving families. They argued that warnings had been ignored, that the boat should never have left shore, and that negligence had turned a storm into a mass casualty event. Videos recovered from passengers' phones showed the final minutes on board, haunting evidence in courtrooms and on the nightly news. What had been a cheerful outing became a desperate struggle against design flaws and poor judgment. Public outrage was fierce. Safety advocates renewed calls to ban duck boats altogether. They pointed out that amphibious craft designed for wartime were never meant for commercial tourism, and that retrofitting them for passengers had created a vehicle uniquely vulnerable to weather and mechanical failure. In the wake of the Branson disaster, many operators across the country shut down. Some closed permanently. The public had lost trust. For the families, the aftermath was personal. Funerals were held across several states. Survivors carried trauma from the moments they spent trapped beneath the canopy, struggling to breathe. In Indiana, where the 9 members of the Coleman family were laid to rest, the community grieved a staggering loss. Their story was told again and again, parents and children gone, a vacation turned to horror. Legal battles dragged on for years. The captain was charged with misconduct and neglect, though some charges were later dismissed. The operator faced lawsuits alleging negligence and wrongful death. Investigations by the NTSB and Coast Guard highlighted systemic failures. They concluded that the boat should never have been on the water during a storm, and that basic safety equipment could have saved lives. It was not just an act of nature, it was a preventable disaster. Today, the Branson duck boats no longer operate. The ramp where Stretch Duck 7 entered the lake is quiet, marked not by laughter, but by memory. The disaster remains a warning about ignoring safety standards, about the risks of turning military vehicles into tourist attractions, and about the cost of complacency. 17 lives were lost on a July evening that should have been routine. Their absence is a reminder that when warnings are ignored, tragedy waits just beyond the shore. Thank you for listening to the Sunken Ledger. Subscribe for more true stories from the depths.